Elijah said to Ahab, "For there is a sound of abundance of rain." Then the prophet went to the top of the mount to pray. Elijah's persistence in sending his servant 7 times to look for rain was rewarded with his announcement. After those years of drought, behold, a cloud as small as a man's hand is coming up from the sea.
While under the inspiration of the Almighty, he had stood the severest trial of faith. Forgetting God, Elijah fled on and on until he found himself in a dreary waste alone. Utterly weary, he sat down to rest under a juniper tree, and sitting there, he requested for himself that he might die. "It is enough now, O Lord," he said, "take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers." The journey of transformation is normally long with many twists and turns, as all that is false within us is gradually transformed into Christ. The dark night is a great blessing from God. It is time when God is reaching into the hidden places of our hearts in order to transform us completely. The dark night is not dark at all. On the contrary, it is very bright, too bright for us, and so it seems to be dark.
God told Elijah to anoint Elisha as his successor and co-worker. The faithful Elisha was now with Elijah as his servant, and he was to be prophet after him. Elisha asked that a double portion of his master's spirit might be upon him. He did not ask to be a greater prophet than Elijah, but to have a double gift, such as a father gave to his oldest son. It was promised if he should see Elijah when he was taken from him. He did see him, for it came to pass as they still went on and talked that, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven, and Elisha saw it. He took up also the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and it had the same power in his hands that it had in the hands of Elijah.
Eliseus continued the work of fighting idolatry, working many miracles which surpassed those of his master.
It was also on Mount Carmel that Elias, deep in prayer, sent his servant to scan the horizon for rain. Finally, after looking 7 times, the servant reported, "Behold, a cloud as small as a man's hand is coming up from the sea." Tradition holds that Elias knew the cloud to be a sign of the coming of the Immaculate Virgin Mary, Mother of the Redeemer. Henceforth, Carmel was sacred in the eyes of all who looked beyond this world.
Our Lady of Mount Carmel is also known as Star of the Sea, a title that developed out of a little cloud that rose from the sea as Elijah prayed. Mary is the cloud that rises out of the sea. The sea is salt water, undrinkable, a vast body of water, next to which the kingdom can still thirst and die. The sea is salty, impure, an image of fallen humanity. Mary rises out of this sea, pure and perfect, laden with the water of grace that will pour out through her to all humanity.
Not the source of grace herself, nevertheless, the container into which all is poured until it overflows out to all people, limitless and life-giving. Not God, but human, Mary rises from the sea, pure and immaculate in her conception, formed as a vessel of God's grace and a place of refuge for his people. Thus, the Carmelite looking upon the Blessed Virgin sees both the contemplative and the example. She is the Queen and Mother of Carmel. She is the chief protector, guide, and example of the order. By the virtue of her human birth, she is our sister as well as our mother in faith. The continued attacks of the Mohammedans forced the Carmelites in Palestine to send the majority of their friars to Europe in 1244.
The following year, St. Simon Stock was chosen to be the 6th general of the order, and the government of the Carmelites was transferred to England. The holy man of Kent was 80 years old by this time, alert, but noticeably weakened by his lifelong penances. His primary concern was not for himself, but for Mary's favorite order, which was still being racked by an ever-increasing variety of persecutions and internal problems. In 1251, burdened with the weight of his many troubles, St. Simon repaired to the monastery in Cambridge. He poured forth fervent prayer in the privacy of his cell, asking heaven again to bestow its graces upon the spiritually parched Carmelites. Just as Elias had obtained through this prayer the end of 3 years' drought in Israel, so too did St. Simon, in a most singular manner, receive an answer to his entreaty.
Whilst in ecstasy he beheld the Mother of God surrounded by a multitude of angels. Our Lady held in her hands the full scapular of the Carmelite habit, and looking upon St. Simon with utmost compassion, she said, "Receive, my beloved son, this habit of thy order. This shall be to thee and to all Carmelites a privilege that whosoever dies clothed in this shall never suffer eternal fire." The holy Carmelite was filled with unspeakable joy and consolation.
The brown scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel is a sign approved by the Church and accepted by the Carmelite order as an external sign of love for Mary, of the trust her children have in her, and of commitment to live like her.
The word scapular indicates a form of clothing which monks wore when they were working. The scapular came to symbolize the special dedication of Carmelites to Mary, the Mother of God, and to express trust in her motherly protection, as well as the desire to be like her in her commitment to Christ and to others. Thus it became a sign of Mary.
The scapular came to symbolize the special dedication of Carmelites to Mary, the Mother of God, and to express trust in her motherly protection, as well as the desire to be like her in her commitment to Christ and to others. Thus, it became a sign of Mary.
On the 750th anniversary of the scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, Pope John Paul II wrote to the entire Carmelite family. He noted that 2 truths were evoked by the sign of the scapular. The first, the constant protection of the Blessed Virgin, not only on life's journey, but also at the moment of passing into the fullness of eternal glory.
And second, the awareness that devotion to her cannot be limited to prayers and tributes in her honor on certain occasions, but must become a habit, which is a permanent orientation of one's own Christian conduct, woven of prayer and interior life, through frequent reception of the sacraments and the concrete practice of the spiritual and corporal works of mercy. The scapular becomes a sign of the covenant and reciprocal communion between Mary and the faithful, translating Jesus' gift on the cross of his mother to John, and through him to all of us, and the entrusting of the blessed apostle and of us to her, who became our spiritual mother.
The brown scapular is a sacramental of the Catholic Church. A sacramental is, by definition, a sacred sign which bears resemblance to the sacraments, and by means of which spiritual effects are signified and obtained through the prayers of the Church. In the case of the scapular, the sacred sign is the scapular itself, and the spiritual effect is the protection of one's souls through the prayers of Mary, as she promised in the vision of St. Simon Stock.